Welcome to the Biz Dad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original Biz Dad himself, Adam LeBar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the Biz Dad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Biz Dad Podcast. Today we have on a fantastic guest, a dad, a father of 2 kids, Courtney Atkinson. Thank you so very much for joining me, Courtney. I'm really excited to have you on, get to know you a little bit, learn about your family, learn about your background, share some awesome nuggets about being a dad and entrepreneurship. And I know one thing you're passionate about from our pre-talk is running teams and doing all that type of stuff. So I'm looking forward to hearing about how you run your family team as well as your work team. So if you can, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little background on your family, and then I'd love for you to kind of dive in on where you came from. Like, give us a little bit of background on your dad and how he impacted where you are today.
Sure, brother. You betcha. And what a great time the day after Father's Day, right?
Yes.
So thanks for having me on as maybe the first guest after Father's Day, bro. So yeah, appreciate being here, man. I'm a real estate team leader. We have a team of a little over 50 agents in 3 markets. Pretty big team by volume. We'll sell a couple $100 million a year. Also have a coaching company for real estate agents, brokers, team leaders. I've been doing that for a good amount of time and having a lot of fun at the man. Like my biggest hope is that, my young kids, Carson and Conrad, are now 6.5 and 8, want to be in that business, and that I can create a business that they might be, desirous of stepping into. So that's kind of my primary objective. I love the work that I do, and they're excited about the prospect of maybe being business owners one day. So I'm excited to, inspire them to be entrepreneurs. My dad was entrepreneurial, although he might argue that he wasn't very successful. But the truth is that he was always trying little things to kind of, to be a hustler. He was a teacher by trade. And I think almost by necessity, my sister was born out of wedlock back in the 60s. And so in those days, that meant that you got married. And he and my mother stayed together, had me 7 years later. And that lasted for about 5 more years. They had a reasonable childhood, no trauma. They just weren't meant to be together. And so they divorced. We lived in the same small community. I'm from Chipman, New Brunswick, town of about 2,000 people. And so the kind of place where you just get on your bike and you come home when the lights, go out. Well, there were no street lights, but when the sun went down. And I spent a lot of time kind of between my parents' places because they were so close. And then, a bit later for grade 6, my mother moved to Fredericton with me. And so that, created a bit of challenge between, myself and my dad. Just seeing him was tough, at that age. And so, he'd come get me kind of in the typical rotation back in those days, which was every other weekend. And, the cool thing was though, that, he and I were really close during that time. And, I opted to spend a lot of my summers there. Yeah. There wasn't as much opportunity from an employment standpoint. But for the kind of work that I was capable of doing and wanted to do, which was hard physical labor in the woods of New Brunswick, paid well and gave me a chance to kind of hang out with my dad. And, growing up, man, I kind of one of the most constant images I have of my dad is going door to door, raising money for charity, just hustling for Rotary Club or for whatever it was, just to build funds for community projects, whether it be, tennis courts or parks or, whatever it was that, they happened to be working on at the time. And I remember going out on evening, nights and weekend, with him doing that, and just always had this like tremendous sense of community and, was always like a civic advocate and, always volunteering. And so I think that was in him from a very young age, being, a farm boy from the sticks, where you really depended on your community to come together and support you in times of hardship, which there were many back in those days. And, I think he carried that forward in as many ways as he could with his limited income being a teacher, but he was quite successful as a high school principal and then ultimately retired. And, now he's having a great time selling cars, and we share that passion as well. So, I mean, there's a gazillion stories in there, as most of us have over the years. I've left out the part where I had an overdose at the age of 12. I left out the part where I got caught with drugs a bunch of times. I left out the part where I crashed a bunch of cars. I've left out a lot of parts in there, but the fact is my dad, was a heck of a man during all those times, and surprisingly never kicked my ass a single time.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing when I look back at some of the things that I did, and, crashing cars and doing stupid things that young folks do. And, never once, my dad came from an abusive house. He came from an abusive house. So it's one of those that you would think that he would have done that to me and never did. And it was, which I thank God for. I mean, it's not, it's a tough road to come from that and then not do it back. Right. But I'd love to kind of actually dive into that a little bit. You're talking, overdosing at 12 and getting caught with drugs multiple times. Like, how did, I've heard multiple stories from folks in the sticks of Canada. I mean, there's really not much to do in a lot of some of those places, like Jordan Peterson is one of the guys I love listening to about, talking about dads. And, he's like, yeah, they're like people dropping out of school early. You do hard labor. There's a lot of drinking and partying, and you're, it doesn't matter at a very young age. So talk to me a little bit about, an overdose at 12 and how your dad dealt with that, and how, what did you learn from your dad in that type of situation?
Oh, man. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's not an uncommon story for these types of places. I mean, a lot of economic hardship, not that I was party to that, but it was certainly all around. And, in those communities, we were certainly upper middle class, no question. But that wasn't the case for my friend circle. There just wasn't any wealth. I mean, for the most part, there was systemic unemployment and poverty, right? Mm-hmm. And, an environment like that, is ripe for gang activity. So, the Hells Angels had always had a foothold in these communities, and this province borders, the US and Maine. And so with kind of an uncontrolled border was a natural place to bring drugs across. And so we always knew, it wasn't a big deal to know a dealer. Like, our friends were dealers. Our friends were in gangs. Like, it wasn't, it didn't seem like an unusual thing to us. And so, drugs being around was, it's just part of life, I suppose, more than anything. And yeah, so, I suppose what happened was my mom wanted to move to Fredericton to provide some, better opportunities, better schools, in theory, kind of a better mix of friends. But as I moved there, desperate to fit in at the ripe old age of, I think, 11 or, whatever it was, I had, the skill, if you will, or these types of people that I like to hang around with. And, I kind of found myself with those same, circles of people. And, next thing I guess I was in grade 7 at that time, we're just buying drugs and getting high all the time. And, one particular night, I just got a little bit sideways and ended up, passing out, splitting my head open, getting a concussion and getting epilepsy out of the whole thing. And I remember waking up in the ambulance quite confused for a minute. My mom was there, and I asked her, what had gone on. And she didn't know at that point. I was living with my mom, and my dad was an hour away in Shipman. And so, go to the hospital, and, by the time I wake up the second or third time, they're both there. And, they asked me, what had happened. And so I knew enough of that state to lie and say that I'd been drinking. Mm-hmm. And, they'd already done blood tests, unbeknownst to me, and knew what was up. They were just kind of waiting for me to fess up. And so anyways, it all came to a head, and, it's just a pretty tough time on them. I mean, how did they handle it? They handled it like champs. I mean, I can't even imagine what that must have been like for them being a parent now, to a 6.5 and 8-year-old. That's not too far down the road for me as a parent. Mm-hmm. And the truth was that they were very loving. They were very caring. They were concerned about the reasons for my desire to do these risky things. They were concerned about my association, and, the ultimate drivers behind these things. And it, circling back and, having done all the work over the years, it's pretty clear that, just like anyone, I was trying to fit in. I've learned that I have ADHD as an adult. And so certainly that was playing into my risk-taking activity and desire to, seek, behaviors that kind of fulfill that need for stimulation. And, not that we knew that at that time, but the ultimate outcome was just a huge amount of accountability and a lot less flexibility.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I think that's, I'd love to say I'd handle it similarly as a parent, but that's one of those things that, you never know how you're going to handle it until you're in the situation, right? Like, I mean, I was in the military for, quite a while. Iraq, Afghanistan, the whole 9 yards. And like everybody always says, yeah, you don't know how you're going to react to combat until you're in combat. You don't know how you're going to react to things as a parent until you're put up with that situation, right? And I'd love to say that I'd react with that same thought process of, okay, well, let's get to the why. Like, let's understand what happened behind it. I can't change the fact that it happened, but I can try to help you understand where you come from and what you do. So, like, is that something that you consciously put effort in now as a dad to try to think that way, or maybe subconsciously, or how does that apply now with what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it does, but I have to say I'm not as calm as they were in that time or throughout my youth. I mean, I've got a book full of stories that I could share about the stupid things that I've done and the risky behaviors and run-ins with police, you name it. And I don't remember there being any yelling. I don't remember there being any rage. I just remember there being disappointment, confusion, the sense, and I shouldn't even say the sense, the awareness that they felt this potential was being wasted. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that was actually, for me, one of the most powerful motivators. It wasn't that, that they thought I was an idiot. They thought that I wasn't living up to my potential, and they made that clear to me. And so it wasn't like there was this unrealistic bar that they were trying to hold me to, but it was pretty clear that they felt that I was falling short of potential. And I took that in the way that it was intended. I think they had a great way of communicating that. And, what you find, now that I know, where a lot of this came from around ADHD is that, like, you just don't learn the same way. Like, you need these types of experiences. And, fortunately I had the right kind of parents to be able to support me through that. Not the kind that, tried to boot me out of the house, for example, which they would have had every reason to in many cases, or, not pay for lawyers to keep me out of jail or whatever else. There's tons of things where they just could have washed their hands and they didn't. And so, yeah, I mean, I turned a corner at a certain point and things started going my way. I wouldn't say that I was without issue, but, I get into a couple good universities and have done well with my life, but a lot of hand-holding and a lot of patience for many decades. Sure.
You said there was a lot of accountability and, restrictions. Like, what kind of accountability did they end up putting on you?
Yeah. I mean, the first question was like, where was the money coming from to buy drugs? And to me,
that was going to be one of my questions. Like,
I was like, since when is money to buy drugs an issue? Like, I was just like, I'll save all my allowance money. I'll go shovel driveways, whatever. I'll just save it and go buy drugs. But that was a big question, so that was like, that turned into a lot of accounting, which admittedly, I was pretty good at working the book, because it wasn't like I stopped using drugs. For a little bit I did because I was concerned about my epilepsy, but, it wasn't a couple of years later I was experimenting again. And, so accountability there and, restricted curfews and just a reasonable time frame to try to prove that I had some sense of responsibility. And, I think it took a while to earn that trust back. There was several years there where, being newly diagnosed with epilepsy meant that there were some limitations on what I could do anyway. So I suppose that was a blessing in disguise, right? But it took a couple of years for me to kind of earn some trust back and gain some flexibility. And naturally, when I had that back, I went right back to doing the same stupid stuff I'd been doing,
Yeah. That's sadly the way that route sometimes goes. So, I can't remember the guy's name. I just quoted it earlier today too, but you are the 5 people you hang around with most, right? So if you stay around the same people, it doesn't matter if you have one person holding you accountable, but there's 5 people that are pulling you the other direction. Yeah. You're going to have a hard time, right? You got to put yourself into a new environment, and that's, sometimes for our kids, that means moving to a new school. Sometimes for us, that means like writing off old friends that aren't really friends, and that's at 12. Good luck. That's a tough mental hurdle to get over.
Especially coming from a different community, and one of the challenges that I've, acknowledged for me at that age was that, floating back and forth between two communities really had me a stranger in both, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this attention seeking behavior and the desire to be loved and liked, it turns out I have RSD, which is like a variant of ADHD, which makes a person, especially sensitive to being, not disliked, but maybe to being an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And, so folks with that type of personality disorder, or whatever you want to call it, will pretty much do anything to fit in. And, I can tell you I did, but the beauty of it is, if we're to flip that on its head, like, I've had, decades of training on, being a chameleon and fitting in any number of circles. Like there's no place I can't make friends, right?
Yeah.
I'm hardwired for it, Doesn't mean that I'm necessarily the world's most outgoing person. I'm a little bit burned out on my extroversion, to be honest, but I can do it, right? So it's been a gift in a lot of ways. As far as business goes, there's no client that I can meet where I feel, displaced, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all home to me. I've been trying for a long time. And so, I think for any one of us, right, we have to look back at these challenges that we faced and ask ourselves, whether it's a combination of parenting or, experience or whatever it is, we've landed here. And if you're not in jail and your health is good, then we ought to be thankful,
Yeah, for sure. Everything we do, it's, I think I said this recently on one of the podcasts, but like the conversation that you and I are having, it's not a conversation between Adam and Court. It's a conversation between everybody you've ever talked to and me and everybody I've ever talked to and you, right? So they're all of these things, we can choose what to do with them, So now I'm trying to teach that to my kids. We, just yesterday I had a chat with my oldest, the way he reacted to his little brother. And he was trying to explain to me the situation. I don't care what the situation was. I don't care at all what the situation was. Like, I don't care who was right, who was wrong. The actions you did were wrong, right? It's how we respond in a situation. Are you reacting to the situation or responding in the situation? So if we learn from those activities that we experienced and we're able to do a better job, moving forward, then that's fine. As long as we're learning from it, if you fail forward. That's fail forward, fail often, fail forward is another thing I like to say. It's a
good lesson. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's only because I failed a lot that I'm able to tell him that it's okay to fail, right? It is one of those things.
Yeah, I feel the same. The truth is that if I don't feel like I'm failing at something on a near daily basis, I feel like I'm not pushing hard enough,
Yeah.
That's not to say that I'm, trying, so hard that I'm exhausting every ounce of my energy every day. But, try new things, falling down is good, as long as you're not, breaking the same leg 3 days in a row for the same stupid thing, like,
yeah. I was telling somebody recently, I was like, none of this is to say that I want my kids to get hurt, but I don't mind if you fall out of a tree and break your arm. I don't mind if you're doing something silly and break it. Like watch your head. I don't want you banging your head, right? That you'll those don't heal as well. Those take a little bit of work, but I want you to try new things and I want you to explore. And I want it. Like that's, to what you were talking about, growing up and always being gone. That's always the way I was. I put hundreds and probably thousands of miles on my bicycle every summer. Like I was gone everywhere, falling out, like lighting fires in the woods up in northern New York. I just had a blast. I loved it. And I want my kids to be able to experience the same thing. But today, there were too many kids who are stuck not doing much of anything now. But
it's true. And there's not that same posse of kids that want to do those things, sadly. For us, I'm 47 and, back in those days, that would have been, call it the mid 80s. That's all anybody did. Like you just get on your bike and you go found the gang and you went fishing or you went throwing rocks at trains or, you get up to some stupid stuff that you probably shouldn't have been doing, but at least you were learning skills, learning what to do, what not to do, social interaction, friendships, not friendships, like all that stuff, we were learning it from a very young age. And I think to a degree, our kids are sheltered from that too much, by virtue of classrooms, the way they're structured, society as a whole. It's tough. I say to my friends, man, like, I find myself strategically trying to find ways to make my kids' lives hard, I really just don't think that there's much challenge out there for people now. Like, I just think everything's so cake. Like, business is easier, school's easier, life's easier. Everybody's so sensitive to feelings being hurt. I love the fact that there's, lots of attention paid to no bullying and stuff, but also like dealing with bullies can be a good thing too, so long as you've got, you know, the skills and somebody on your side to help you through it. Like, not to say that I want bullying. That's clearly not the message here, but the point is that challenge is good. And, I try to create challenge strategically for those little guys. They don't like it sometimes, but hey, I'm not that dad who's here to make life easy.
Yeah. I was just saying, great men create good times create weak men create bad times create great men. Right. So, I mean, giving our, you know, especially as you're talking about, you have two boys and I have two boys, like giving them some hard times, some hardship to go through, is really going to do a lot for them. I think, you know, like my kids are growing up in a completely different life than I grew up in. But in really every aspect that you can think of, you're looking at whether it's technology, whether it's the, you know, the financial, backing that they have, whether it's whatever, everything is different than when I grew up. So, you know, we got to give them some challenges and help them grow and become stronger. And I don't care if it's martial arts, if it's sports, if it's, you know, running a business, helping me do that, like challenge all the time.
Yeah. You know, I think of this business. I mean, on the one hand, right, you know, I'm building, you know, two businesses. There'll be a third one here unpacking soon. That my hope is, you know, that at some point these kids in their presumably late 20s, just given how old I am already, you know, will be in a position to be able to come into. But on the other hand, like that's ridiculous. Like what a ridiculous thing to do for a child to even suggest that they might have that to look forward to, because like I didn't have that. Not to say that I was disadvantaged, but you know, my dad tried many businesses and didn't have a lot of success and typically only had the summers to make them a reality. And, you know, by the time that those kids roll around, I will have been doing this, you know, 35 years. Well, there's going to be a lot of money. It's going to be very easy. And, all the kinks in the road will be ironed out. I mean, gosh, they're nearly all ironed out now. And so, you know, when I look at how much my character and personality and strength has grown in the last 14 years of building this business, like there couldn't have been a better proving or training ground for me. And so I wonder, like, what does that look like for these young people? Like, how do I create challenge for them so that they can also have the benefit of those struggles? You know, like what's it mean to nearly go broke? Like, you know, so many times as my wife and I have trying to build these businesses. Well, I tell you what, like you learn to realize that it actually doesn't matter. Like win or lose, I got my loving wife. I'm always going to have a car. I can always put a roof over my head. Aside from that, I got happiness in my health. Like I don't need anything else. I like building stuff, but I might go build another business and that one might be better. Like I really don't fear, you know, having to make a big pivot, right? My identity's not tied up in it like it used to be. And, you wonder, like, how do I support a young person, a child, a teenager, an adult, and experiencing some of these things so that they have the benefit of that, right?
Well, I mean, I guess potentially, and just spitballing in the middle of thinking through this, is that last thing you just said, where you don't really have that fear of doing those things, right? That came from the experiences, but that doesn't mean that you have to have your kids go through the experiences to teach them the same thing, right? Have them fail at a few different things, give them some money and watch it disappear. Watch them burn it, you know, like, relatively speaking, of course, like I've been talking about, and I really need to, put a little bit more effort into it. My kids are excited about it, but building a vending machine route for them, right? So that they can learn about, you know, supply and demand and all that, be like what it takes to actually put a little business together. Right. And then like, if there's going to be a point where I'd be like, okay, well, these next 2 months are yours. You tell me how you want to do it. And then if their piggy bank doesn't get bigger because they failed to manage it properly, well, that could be a lesson in and of itself, that, you know, you're teaching them something that they don't have to go through the hard time that you did. And they don't have to not know what a savings account like I didn't know. Like I could teach them all of these things too. But, they'll get their trials, you know, especially if they want to chase the business side. But what are your thoughts on the business side, right? Because I mean, you're saying that you've got two businesses now, you got one more potentially coming soon, or that is coming soon by the sounds of things. So like, at what point do you want to include the kids in the business? And how much do you want to push that or not push that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, not push it. But my vision is that if I make it look attractive enough, and if I'm a decent enough dad and I'm present enough and we have enough fun together and can afford a lifestyle that, you know, is enjoyable, there'll be an attraction there at least. And, you know, given the kind of work, you know, it seems appealing to a kid anyway. I mean, the one thing about running a real estate team is that it's a little bit like a popularity contest. So that's kind of a neat thing to a kid, like they know that everybody knows their dad, and that's kind of cool. So yeah, what do I think of that? Well, my plan is our plan, my wife and I own all these companies together, is to sell a third of it to some of our partners. That's part of our exit plan here over the next 5 years, and retain 2/3 each, a third apiece. And then with the idea of at some point transferring them to each of the kids, so that they could run them together if they wish. And if not, we can, sell them to the other partners. That's kind of the transition plan here over the longer period, to hang on to 2/3 of each company. What would that look like? I mean, we're big advocates for education. I know that that's, something that a lot of people contest these days, but, in Canada, it's not so expensive, to go to university. And, I can appreciate the value of a liberal arts education and the ability to establish some critical thinking skills, to mature a little bit in a sheltered environment, to learn how to write, to do accounting, to do those types of things. And then, go screw somebody else's business up for a couple of years, and then, get your wits about you, get your butt beat a few times, and then, maybe decide to come home and join the old man. So that's kind of, if I could paint a picture, I think that's what it looks like. But, who knows, man? Cause you know how it is, right? Kids are so different. One of them's, really artistic and, just very sweet and patient and a little quiet. And, the other one's like me. He's got ADHD. He's all over the place, big feelings, big personality, tons of energy. And so, they could do any number of a million things that a person would want to do on this planet, and none of them could be real estate or coaching. Right. So
yes, for sure.
I'll just do my best to be a great example, to make it look enjoyable and to encourage them. And I really would like to work with them. Like, to me, that was one of my greatest pleasures in life, would be to share, days with them and impacting the communities that we serve. And to agree, even in the coaching company, we get to impact communities across North America. That's a lot of fun. And so the potential to do that with my children would bring me great joy, but one has no control.
Yeah. Oh, ain't that the truth? Yeah. We barely have control over what they're going to eat for dinner, despite our desires. Have that control.
It's funny you should say that. Last night was literally the night where we drew the line in the sand. Now your listeners may judge me for this, but, we're late stage parents. Okay. My wife and I banged out a couple of kids, at the last possible opportunity before it was too risky, in our view, at least. And so we'd already had a life established, we had a lifestyle, we lived a certain way. So we've used sitters a lot, and, we've traveled with the kids a lot, and we've been privileged, due to the stage of life that we're in. So yesterday we said to the kids, listen, like, here's the deal. Like, this isn't a short order kitchen. Like, starting today, you eat what we eat, My youngest hates soup. We happened to have stew on, and of course, he threw a fit, so option B is that they get to cook for themselves. And so, wasn't too much longer when he was starving. He decided to come back and figure out how to cook himself a grilled cheese sandwich. So little 6-year-old, got back in the kitchen and didn't burn himself. And so, major win at our house last night, around getting a 6.5-year-old fed by cooking his own grilled cheese.
That's up. And you thought they weren't going to have trials. See?
Yeah.
This is, but 6.5 though, that's a trial, figuring out how to make a grilled cheese. That's a tough one.
He did all right. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's funny. So let's talk a little bit about the business side of the house. We'll learn a little bit more about your business. Tell me about the two businesses you already have, and then we'll go into, you can go as deep or as shallow as you want, and I'll try to dig in a little bit, and let's hear about it.
For sure. So, we serve 3 communities, in miles. They'd be about 100 miles apart. I live in Lethbridge, Alberta. That's a city of about 100,000. My wife's from Medicine Hat. That's east 100 miles. And, we have a team of, 20 agents in each of those 2 cities. And then we service Calgary, Alberta, which more of your listeners, I'm sure, have heard of, with the Calgary Stampede, the greatest outdoor show on earth, they say. City of about 1.4 million. So we're fairly new there. We've got 10 agents in that market, but as you can imagine, lots more potential for growth. So, we've been successful. We sold a little over 600 homes last year. That puts us in one of the, top 5 teams in Canada, maybe top 25 or 30 in North America, as far as kind of size and volume goes, maybe. And having a lot of fun. We're pretty deleveraged from that business. Melanie runs operations. I'm the CEO, and we focus a lot on systematization, automation, culture, community, support, and having a lot of fun. And so we're trying to find good people that just want to have fun, want to make a lot of money, and want to serve their communities and want to do it in this way that feels like a family to us. And so at first we thought that, maybe that wasn't so scalable, but as it turns out, there's a lot of people that are trying to, find a way to combine those same things. And so that's been our superpower, is leading with heart and leading with community and just letting people find us. So that's been awesome. I can imagine that, in the next couple of years, 3 years, we'll be over 100 agents, doing a couple thousand transactions a year. And I look forward to those days. And it's not so far down the line, and it's not going to be so challenging at this stage to do that, given what we've already accomplished. Backstory to that, however, is that, like anything, you don't get to a place like this without really screwing things up royally, without, having to do a lot of looking in the mirror and, having a lot of discussions with self around ego and around motivation and around, the things that drive us. And, of course, there's all the conversations around balance and, time and stress and all those types of things, health. So we've been through all that. I've been through times where I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I've been through times where I couldn't sleep. I've been through times where, I needed hundreds of thousands of dollars in, 48 hours and didn't know where I was going to get it, several times. And we've always pulled it together. And so, I think what that's created for us is, an opportunity to be super resilient, to really be able to let go of outcomes and focus on the joy of the work and serving people and lifting others up and trying to be an example to others. Now, one of the underlying pieces there is that we've been in this very unusual market, contrasted to nearly any place else in North America. If you were to look at our prices in 2009, they're still much lower than where they were then. An only example of my own house that I had appraised in, this was an old house that I used to own that I had appraised in 2009. I had appraised at $520 without a finished basement. We finished the basement, sold it for $460 a couple of years later. I sold that house again last year, or somebody on my team did, and it sold for $445. So we haven't had this 10-year run of appreciation where prices have doubled like they have in so many places. And the good thing is that, we've been able to build a big business in a market with low commissions, low average house prices. Our average house price around $300,000, or average commission per side is about 1.8%. And, we've been able to do it lean and mean and still be quite profitable. And so that's given us a lot of insight and a lot of skill to be able to coach. And, I didn't set out to coach. It kind of landed, on me. Truth was, I started doing a podcast myself. I started interviewing agents, and I like telling stories. And, at the end of these podcasts, it seemed like half the people I was speaking to were asking me if I was a coach. And, like any responsible entrepreneur, I said yes. And all my coach friends and said, okay, I'm a coach now. What should I charge? And, actually a couple of GoBundance guys, Adam Roach and Sam Wiegert were my friends that I called about that. And, so that's how I got into the coaching space about 5 years ago. And then it just kind of snowballed from there, built a bit of a reputation. And now, we're scaling courses and coaching team leaders, big brokerages, with over 300 agents, and helping them solve a lot of the same problems that we solve. But frankly, just with more money on the table, because typically the house price is much higher. The commissions are typically closer to 3%. There's, a lot more resources available, but, with a market shift like the one that many markets are in, being systematized, being accountable, having strong culture, having strong retention, having an improved sales force, having better scripting, better dialogues, and all those types of things are really important. And so we're really finding our stride here, this last 6 to 9 months. And we're going to be dropping some really impactful courses, with some folks that we're working with in the space that have done really good work for others. So we're pretty stoked on that. That's our second business. And then the third business is, a little bit on the DL for now, but it's related to.
Sorry, it's just you and me talking. No big deal.
Yeah, right. It's related to those businesses, kind of like an add-on, essentially for all those folks. So that'd be something I can probably talk about in another 3 or 4 months once we're a little further down the road with it. But we're really excited about that too. It's a natural progression of the offerings that we already have and the things we've already been doing, and makes a lot of sense given the demand that we see.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I definitely want to figure out the connection on how you, we skipped a good 25 years from, bashing your head and getting epilepsy at 12 to, running a couple businesses and whatnot. So how did you get from that position? I mean, obviously you said you saw your dad with entrepreneur type of spirit, so you clearly picked some of that up. How did you make that connection? And you alluded to you going to college, getting into a couple good colleges earlier. So can you walk me through that a little bit so I can understand that part of the background?
Yeah. There has to be like one or two themes that were always there. And I would say that, the two themes that were consistently present in my life were integrity, being from a small town, my parents being from modest means, they were just people where your word meant something. Okay. Like you just didn't say that you were going to do something. You did it. And oftentimes you didn't talk about it. You just did it. Okay. Those were values that were held firmly in our family. And I suppose modesty to a degree as well, that kind of ties in with that. I think, to a degree, modesty and integrity were important, and maybe dovetailed a little bit because we didn't grow up having much. They certainly grew up having less. And, but they were also keenly aware that even having so little, they had so much more than others. There's stories abound of my dad's family, being, second generation farmers in Nova Scotia, seeing immigrants, that were nearly starving and taking them in and, feeding them on their farm when they had, complete crop wipeouts and, animals that had, just completely catastrophic things with their herds and so forth. And still, welcoming literally dozens of people and like people sleeping in the barn, and they would be feeding them, with what little they had. So those things were, definitely passed down, I would say, over the years. And I think the second thing, or maybe third, depending on how you want to count it, is just an incredible work ethic. I saw my dad like bust his butt, just always. And, I don't think anybody looks at education like it's a real physical job necessarily. But, what a lot of people don't realize is that, teachers don't get into teaching for the summers off. Teachers get into teaching to make an impact, right? And there isn't a place on the planet that pays teachers enough for the work that they do. And the other truth is that, administratively, it can be very challenging to make the impact that you want. And so, my dad put in incredible hours, as the principal. He spent most of his career as a principal, working all day, staying late, going to the dances, being the first one in the school, the last one out. And then in addition to that, being involved in municipal politics, being an advocate, being a volunteer. And so, he just really didn't quit, and, although I didn't really adopt these traits at a particularly young age, I can remember, going to work, probably after my first year, or I guess maybe after my grade 12 year. And this guy wanted to hire me for a job at his convenience store. And he said, okay, well, why don't you come over to my house? I'll meet you there, Monday morning. Whatever time, 8 o'clock or something. I said, okay, I'm not sure what the heck's going on at this dude's house. I mean, I'm trying to get a job at his convenience store. So I go there, and dude hands me a shovel and points to his backyard and has outlined where he wants me to dig him a pool. And, so I spent the next 2 weeks with a shovel digging a pool 8 hours a day. And that was my interview. And, so that was kind of like an introduction to, what that could look like. And at $5 an hour back in those days, it wasn't like you were making a lot of money. And then after that, I think I just realized that, you know, I had this ability to do hard things, I guess is really what it come down to. You know, I had done a lot of easy things. You know, I had done a lot of drugs and a lot of fooling around, but I also knew that I was a pretty smart person. I also knew that, you know, I was sufficiently different from others that, you know, I had this ability to kind of get along with people. I had this ability to make friends wherever I went. And, you know, I also was playing football by that point. You know, I was desperate to make friends. And so the football team seemed like a pretty cool place to hang out. My mom loved football. So I started playing football, and turned out I was pretty good at it. And I knew that if I was going to go play university ball, that I needed to have better grades. Mm-hmm. So I just pulled it together in the last half of grade 11, you know, just committed and studied and you know, I didn't like get a scholarship, but I got in, you know. And back in those days, if you played football, of course, your grades didn't have to be so high. So I think I got in with like a 71 average or something like that when everybody else needed like a 90. And, yeah, I mean, I just committed. Like I just ended up just working hard to play ball because I wanted to be successful at that. And I can't say that I worked particularly hard at school, but you know, the things that I was interested in, there wasn't really many people that could outwork me. And I think over time, you know, over the course of one's life, we start to realize the things that we have aptitude for, the things that we're desirous of pursuing, the things that, you know, inspire us, motivate us, and give us the jam that we want in return. And for me, you know, fast forward, I was unsatisfied in my career and I wanted to do something that had unlimited earning potential and gave me a direct connection to the outcomes, people. And so I thought real estate would be a good fit. The barriers to entry were low and competition seemed thin. And so I thought, hey, you know what? I can do this thing. I didn't care about houses. I just wanted to do something different and make more money, you know? So, you know, long trajectory, of course, that's a 25-year story compressed into 3 or 4 minutes. But I think, you know, any one of us, if we can just kind of give ourselves permission to pivot, you know, because I mean, in university, like, you know, I get in with the goal of studying sociology, hated it, started psychology, hated it, started religious studies, hated it, you know, what made a move over to English, did okay at it, didn't love it. Then history, you know, found it easy enough, didn't really love it. Thought I was going to be a teacher, decided I wanted to do an MBA, didn't have the market to get in, went into forestry because I had been working in the woods for 4 years, hated that. Went back and did an accounting designation because I realized that I wanted to do my MBA, but I needed better grades to get in. So I did that for 2 years, was really good at accounting. And then I did an MBA in finance, was killer at finance and marketing. And, yeah, decided to get out of that and, go to work for a bank, did that for a minute and then went to work for a university. And yeah, I think too often, you know, young people especially are trying to categorize their lives. You know, they're trying to like, you know, build their roadmap so early on. And if I can, you know, credit my parents for a series of things, one of them being most important was they never, you know, held my feet to a career fire. You know, it wasn't like they felt like I needed to be pinned down and doing one thing. And I pivoted a ton. I mean, I pivoted, you know, dozens of times. And, you know, once I landed in this career of real estate, I haven't looked back. You know, this is my passion. It's what I love to do. And, you know, I can do it 24/7.
Yeah. I did a lot of pivoting myself, even like in the military. I did more jobs in the military than most people will ever do in the military. If they go in the military, you usually do one job and you go through until you retire in 20, 25, 30 years. I did 4 different jobs in the military, which is a very rare thing. You know, and then I got out before I even retired. I got out because I was enjoying running the businesses I was running. I was like, this is just great. And then I realized maybe that's why I kept switching. And maybe that's why you kept switching. Like something about being an entrepreneur, like it feels like it's a different day all the time. Like, I mean, I can always pivot and do something different. You're building a different team. You're creating something different. You're like, I didn't feel like I was in the same grind as I was in, you know. I think my thought is that maybe that's why I did what I did with switching jobs all the time in the military. So it was just, there was that entrepreneur inside of me that was saying, hey, you just need something new. You need some sort of refresh. You need build it out.
Well, and it gives you some control too. I think that, you know, the kind of thing that happens in a lot of careers, and I certainly found this in the ones that I was in, that you feel out of control. You know, somebody else pulling the strings, you know, sure. And then there's this like repetitive nature where, you know, it's not a broad type of environment, at least in the work that I was doing. And they were reasonably high paying jobs. But I thought, man, if this is all there is, like, if this is all there is, and this is the people that I'm going to be doing it with, like, I've made some terrible choices in my life, because I was looking around my last job and there was nobody as happy as I wanted to be. Like, in truth, like, I just saw a bunch of miserable people punching the clock till retirement. And I thought, man, are we all just waiting around here to the magic math where we get to walk away with a modest paycheck? Like,
if they're even thinking about that math. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, they really were. When I worked in HR, I knew it for a fact. It was based on the number of consultations that I would have with people based on the math. And I thought, holy cow, like, you don't even like this job. You don't like your colleagues. You're clearly unhappy, and you're just going to bank on the next 17 years till you can get this paycheck. Well, that's a soul destroying period of time. Like, you may not make it, like, literally, you may not make it. And so I thought, hey, I'll go fail at real estate. I was really prepared. I thought, you know what, like, realtors didn't seem like, they had to be like, Mensa members to do the work. And I thought, okay, well, I can go do this thing, but if I fail, I can go do something else, but at least I'll be happy, Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the way I felt when I left the military. I mean, when I told my command I was leaving, they were like, you're what? Like, you have 4.5 years until you can retire. I said, you know how much I could do in 4.5 years? And you know how much more stress I have hanging out with you guys for 4.5 more years? Like, I couldn't do it anymore. And, one of the things that really put me over the edge was I was at so I started off as an enlisted guy and then became an officer later on. I had a break in the middle, went to college, and then joined the reserves for a short time. So total, I had like 15.5 years of active, like 18 years of total service before I got out. But at around, I don't know, 13 years in, I was traveling all the time, and my oldest came running up to me, and I was taking the trash out, and Daddy, don't leave again. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I couldn't, it broke my heart, and like, I have literally, since I was like 13 years old, I've wanted to be a dad. Like, something about being a dad was just exciting to me. And now here I am with 3 kids, absolutely love it. Like, and to see that on his face and go, there's no way I can do this. Like, for the government to just send me wherever the heck they want to, whenever they want to, be treated like a pawn here and there. I wasn't, I just couldn't do it. Like, it's one of those that, I've heard it multiple times, but like, okay, well, look at your boss's boss. Is that the kind of person you want to be when you retire? And if it's not, you might not be in the right spot, right? You might want to look somewhere else. If that is where you want to be, like, great. Like, if your agents are going, okay, well, they look at you and say, is that what I want to do? And if it is, then great. Like, let's teach you how to do what I'm doing and get you to be where you could be me, not in my market, but you could be me somewhere else. Right. But I mean, if that's not what you want, then man, make the pivot. And it was tough. I got harassed a lot for jumping ship and, throwing away, quote unquote, my retirement. But what else would I have thrown away in that next 4.5 years? Who knows?
It's hard to say, man. And it's so amazing that you had the bravery and the confidence to do that. I'm sure it was a big ordeal, but at the same time, I think too often people aren't prepared to bet on themselves. And I see that in my business too. Like, we have a real estate boot camp. It's one of the things that we're known for. It's one of the things that we coach and help other teams create. So most of our team has come from another industry. We've helped them get their license, and we've trained them to become successful real estate agents. And I know that journey because I've been through it, and I've helped so many others get into real estate from it. But the truth for me is that if it's going to work, you really do have to burn the ship. You can't kind of like hang on and be like, I'm going to try this thing over here and I'll see how it goes. But like, you really do just have to say, okay, you know what, this is a break in my identity. I'm putting that behind me and I'm committing to whatever this is. And, it'll be what it'll be. I'll give it my best. And if it doesn't work out, then I can always go do something else. But I would never forgive myself if I didn't do this now. And I have to presume that there's a part of that in there for you too, where you're thinking, okay, gosh, like, I got, this critical time with my children, my health, my life, like, it's now or never. If I stay, and maybe I stay forever. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was rather broken too, like the health wise, right? I mean, I'd already had neck surgery, shoulder surgery, bad back, all this stuff. And I'm like, and then you guys are going to beat me up for another 5 years. Like, I'd like to be able to play with my grandkids, and I have a hard time playing with my kids. So like, this isn't something that I think is sustainable. I got to figure something else out. But, I thank the Lord. I've got a wife who's still in the military. So it gave me a bit of a cushion to fall back on. And I told her, hey, worst case scenario, I mean, let's say everything I do fails, but when I got out, I mean, granted, I had a couple hundred doors of apartment building, like a couple hundred apartment doors. And, I'd set myself up pretty well in running an education company, to teach military members and veterans how to invest in real estate. So, I mean, I had a decent amount of stuff going on, but like, let's say it all fails. Like, okay, then I do something else. Like, and then I get to teach my kids how to be resilient. Like, oh, shucks, like I get to teach them how to take risks, how to be resilient, how to work through problems. And like, yeah, so now at least I'm a present dad, where if everything fails in the military side of the house, I'm no longer a present dad, I'm in a box somewhere. So, that was a real reality with, some of the stuff I used to do. So it was,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to think like, how difficult it is for like, just take my example, leaving, a job where I was a long ways off from a pension. So you're 4.5 years away. Your identity is deeply connected, to the work. The community of people that you're with is like a brotherhood, right? Like there's a lot of glue there. I mean, I get the things that you're pushing away from, but the glue is strong in the military, in any of the armed forces, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, there was what is it? You're either running away from something or running towards something. Which one is it? Like in my case, it was a little bit of both, right? I mean, I felt that glue almost felt like I was a fly in the Vaseline more than I was, attached to my brothers by the time I finally went through it.
Yeah.
So it was like, I gotta be able to figure out how to get away from this. And I'm running towards being a good quality present dad. And it just, it was tough. So, with all the pivots that you've done and, how are you planning to, or how are you already kind of, teaching some of the skills you've learned to your kids to be able to say, hey, this is how dad has done this. And this is, in your case, mom and dad are both running the business. This is how we're doing these things. This is why we make these decisions. Do you bring them in on those types of conversations already or not quite yet?
Yeah, I do. For me, one of the things that I learned, before I had ADHD, I had a really difficult time managing stress, managing anxiety, even managing depression, which is pretty common for people with RSD, as it turns out. But as a result of that, I nearly gone broke this one last time, and I think it was 2015. And so, I really doubled down on my personal practice, gratitude and affirmations and meditation and, way more exercise than I was doing before. And it was incredible. And so when my kids were young, I just decided that I was going to do some of these things with them, that we would go to bed and talk about the things that we're grateful for, and that I would go through a series of affirmations with them. And I don't want to say that we've been perfectly consistent, but it's been a theme, for them since it was an appropriate thing to do, probably around 3. Okay. And that's evolved interestingly because my oldest now, who's 8, is really interested in the business, and the kids are oddly interested in stories. And, my family has a culture of storytelling. Right. And so I can't recall exactly when it began, but it's been in the last 12 months. My son, Carson, the oldest, decided that he wanted me to tell him a business story each night. And so I do. Like I strategically will spend a minute or two just kind of thinking about something that happened in the day. And I'll try to find a way to explain it to an 8-year-old where it means something. And so literally he gets a 15-minute lesson on business, on personalities, on leadership, on growth, on development, on challenges, on, adverse conditions. He's hearing about these things each and every day. My youngest, doesn't have quite the interest yet. I think also because he's a bit younger and because he's got ADHD, he doesn't really quite have the focus for it yet, but he loves the gratitude and the affirmations and he really needs that. So I think we'll eventually be able to get him there. And then I think the other piece that's been really cool for us, although it wasn't, perfectly intentional, but, the space that I'm in here today is in my Lethbridge office. So we have a 5,000 square foot space here on 2 floors, but on the other side of the upper level is a suite that we built for my in-laws. So we built them a condo up there. So just, pretty much behind this wall, there's an elevator and I can pop in there and after school, go up and hang out with my kids. She gets them at 3:00. And so, they're down here. You know, my mother-in-law's walking through meetings, and she'll walk into my office when I'm sitting with clients. And, you know, I don't want to live a life where my kids can't walk into a meeting, you know, like, and I'll be honest, if somebody's bothered by that, they can find another person to work with.
I love that.
Okay.
That warms my heart. Yeah. And that's one thing I didn't tell you before, you know, I try to make sure that everybody knows it. Like when I first started doing this podcast, when I first had the idea, I wanted to do it on like Saturday mornings so that, you know, I could include the kids on the podcast, like have the kids in there for the first 15 minutes and have a conversation. But then I realized, how important Saturday mornings are for a lot of families, right? But that's a tough thing to take away and ask somebody to step aside for that long. But my kiddos have shown up on multiple of these podcasts. And I love when other people, like, I mean, there's one guy I was interviewing, Aaron Velke, a really good buddy of mine. He's awesome. So his little guy came into the room, you know, just kind of crawled in with his mother-in-law, and I was like, bring him on over. Let's chat with the kid, you know? Cause like, I mean, why the heck not? You know, like there was that one interview, I think it was, I don't know, it was on CNN or something, some news, something or other. And one of the guys was talking.
Story literally 3 days ago. I know exactly where you're going, but I want to
like it. So the kid walks in, and like the nanny's he's like trying and like, what the heck? Like, bring the kid. Like, okay, now everybody on national TV gets to see my kid.
100% chance that nanny got fired, right?
Yeah, no joke. You like, and the kid probably got scolded, and you know, like if it was me, I mean, granted, I don't know, maybe I'm in a different place, and I don't know. I've never been on national TV like that, so maybe maybe I don't know how I'm going to react, but I'm pretty sure I know how I'm going to react. To be like, well, guess what? I'm a dad. This is part of being a dad.
Dude,
like,
I was in a coaching call out here with a paying client. My wife walks into the office. One of the team members that we have just had a baby 6 weeks ago, and she just passes me a 6-week-old baby. Like, am I going to say no to holding a 6-week-old baby? Like, come on, man. Like, you've had kids. You miss that. We all miss that. They're pretty cute, right? And here's the thing. I don't care if you don't like me for taking a minute to hold a baby. But I'm banking on the fact that most people probably going to like me more. Okay. Like, and if you don't, like, you're not my people. That's
probably not my kind of people I want to be around anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, life's short, bro. Like, listen, and we all miss our kids at that age. I mean, I know it can be hard. We all get that, the sleepless nights and so forth. And, you know, you're going to be facing that again here right away, right?
Already am. Yeah.
But you miss it, you know, you miss those sweet little voices, and you miss those challenges. And, I want to be a part of that whenever I can, for sure. I don't wish it away at all.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it again, like, it's just like the conversation part I told you, where, you know, I'm having a conversation with you and all of your interactions in the past. Like, I mean, I saw so many divorces and so many absentee fathers in the military that it's like, I do not ever want that, you know, like, I don't know if there's a way to go overboard with it. I hope that there's not, and I hope that I don't find that way to like be so involved and like so, you know, allowing of that. But man, oh man, like, I'm only a couple years in of being out of the military, and there's no way I would have it any other way. I mean, I pick my kids up from school, I drop them off at school, I make their lunches, you know, I help them with their homework. I love being able to do all of that stuff. You know, and right now it's summer, so of course they come walking into the room. Like, I mean, they're in a different city right now, so that works out. They're with their mom having some fun in Orlando without me, those jerks. But I mean, like, come on to that. Man, just, I love it. Yeah. I love just that energy, that feeling.
I find it so funny that you told that story. Like, that's such an obscure thing. I can't, like, you know, I can't underline that enough. I literally was saying that. What day is today? Today's Monday, right? So I was telling that story last week, no earlier than Wednesday. I can't remember the context, but I just remember thinking, like, why wouldn't you have just grabbed your kid? You know what I mean? Like, just like, as if, like, you know, people aren't just going to appreciate the fact that you can multitask. You can be a dad and a business person simultaneously. You know, like, we've all done it. Okay. Like, we've all, you know, changed the diaper while we were on the phone, or, you know, had to make a lunch or whatever. You know, you're on the phone with somebody and there's screaming kids in your house, and it sounds like utter madness. And you're like, well, this is my life, and this is the way we're dealing with it right now. You know, like, I don't know. I don't think we should have to pretend. That's maybe a dad thing, man. I mean, maybe that's part of the challenge, is that guys think they've got to, you know, put on these airs, and you can't be a professional and you can't be a dad simultaneously. They have to be kind of like, you know, you divided things. It's not been my experience. It's not the life I want to live.
No, mine either. And I think that's one of the reasons that I wanted to do this podcast too, is show that there's other ways to do the dad thing, you know, especially as entrepreneurs. Yeah. Because we can get so sucked into our businesses and this daggum thing right here that, you know, we struggle to, you know, pay enough attention and do all this stuff. So, I mean, if we have the opportunity, we darn well better be involved in the kid's life. And, you know, those absentee fathers I was telling you about, and absentee, like, sounds like a rough word, but, you know, when you're stationed in a different country and you're divorced and your kids are in America, you're pretty daggum absentee, right? So, like, do you want to impact your kids from the other side of the world, or do you want to impact them from being next to them? Like, figure out a way to be a good, involved father. I'm super passionate about it. In case you can't tell.
I can, yeah. Well, and one other thing that comes to me too, and this is a bit of an extreme one, but it's worked really well for me. You know, I decided early on that, you know, I needed to have a practice that was going to help me be, you know, just a more put together, lower stress, kind of better connected human being. And I knew that would have impact in my business, my family, and my life, my health, and all those things. And I decided that, you know, I would just start getting up ridiculously early. I mean, it got progressively early. I think I started getting up as early as 3, settled on the fact that was actually ridiculous, and then leveled out at about 4. But, you know, the truth is that I get a lot accomplished between 4 and 7:30. I roll into the house. Kids are just getting going. You know, I can get their breakfast. I can get their lunches packed, get myself ready, get them out the door. You know, I'm ready to take my first phone call at 8:30. Next one's at 8:45. Then I got my team meeting at 9. Like, it's a very well sequenced, you know, morning. And I don't feel any pressure or stress around it. I mean, I get to be present for my kids, you know, for the hour that they want me present, you know? And so I know that, you know, our listeners, most people don't want to get up that early, but just for me personally, it's allowed me to not have that hustle and bustle of the morning that I used to have. You know, I don't wake up on my heels, you know, like I used to at 7. You know, I got an hour and a half of things to do, but I got to be somewhere in an hour, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got loads of time, you know, and by the time I roll into the house, I'm in a great mood because most of my troubles are behind me. You know, I've already dealt with a lot of what I needed to do, and now it's just family time. So that's another thing that I really value.
That's awesome. Yeah. Waking up early has been one of those things that, at the beginning of COVID, I mean, I was waking up early all the time anyways, and I was still in the military, so I had to go to work every day, but there were multiple Go Abundance guys that were like, hey, like, my schedule's completely jacked up. I'm all over the place. I said, all right, well, let's meet up together. Let's do an early morning phone call. So we had a 5:30 in the morning phone call. And the thing lasted for over 2 years. We were on this 5:30 in the morning phone call, like keeping it going with just check in. What are we doing in business today? What are you doing in life today? Where are you at? How are we moving forward?
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. Now it took a break for a little while in my move, and it's been kicked back on again with me and one other guy. One guy moved to Phoenix, so he's 3 hours behind us. So there's no way he's waking up at 2:30 in the morning. But yeah, we still knocking out those phone calls, and it's a game changer when you really like put through it. Like, for me, that was the only time I'm able to work out. So if I don't work out then, I'm not going to work out throughout the rest of the day. So I've got to get it in the morning, or it's just not going to happen. And I've been getting a little flabby, so I need to get the working out back in the business. So.
Well, and that's, I mean, as an example to children, right? We often think about the proactive ways that we parent, right? But I think we can all agree that there's a lot of parenting that happens in the gap, right? You know, there's a lot of parenting that happens passively when we're not trying to parent, you know, what they're looking at when we hope they're not looking, what they're hearing when we hope they're not listening, right? And, so yeah, your kids are seeing that, man. That's awesome. Congrats.
What is it? Parenting is caught, not taught, you know, or like they catch what you're doing more than they catch what you're teaching, you know? So, you know, be the example they need to have. And anytime I'm not, I do what I can to tell them, hey, daddy just made a very bad example of what to do, you know? And, you know, I'm hoping that, you know, all I can do is, you know, I almost hate the saying because I don't think it's necessarily true, but like, you're going to screw up your kids. It's your choice on how bad it is, right? Like, can you figure out how to do it as little as possible? You know, I hope that that's not actually factual. I'm hoping that I don't screw up my kids. I'm hoping I do nothing but try to improve them and make them better. But at the same point, I mean, I'm going to make mistakes. I think owning up to them helps to fix that as opposed to screw them up.
I think so. I mean, I have this weird philosophy around that. I mean, there's kind of two elements to it. One, I've already shared with you about how, I was strategically trying to make some things difficult, no question. But, I have a lot of forgiveness for myself for the mistake that I've made and the challenges that I've faced and, the things that I wish that I'd done better as a dad. And, I look back, I'm telling you the perfect story about my parents too, but we can all agree that there's things in there that aren't perfect. So yeah, I don't know that I would want to change that. I think that, they need something to push against too, right?
Yeah.
They need, a lever at times when the driver is not strong enough,
Yeah.
And so, to a degree, I hope that I'm providing them with some of that. Not baggage that's too heavy to carry. But baggage that's motivating, if you know what I mean.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to think about it. But I think to that point though, it's not really screwing the kids up. I think that's challenging them and challenging is not screwing up. So,
fair enough. Good way to put it.
Yeah.
There's food on the table. There's a roof over the head. There's loving parents in the house. I mean, what else do you need, right?
Yeah. A lot, but yeah, I think that's a very good start. So, so what kind of practices would you say that you've instilled in your kids that you can already see like large impacts in what they're doing? I mean, you already mentioned the gratitude and affirmation seems to be two of the things that they've really both clung on to. But what are the things that you see like that they're doing it? One thing I talked to some folks and like sometimes it seems like our kids are carrying a little mirror, going back to that caught not taught. Like they'll do something and it's like they're shining a mirror at me saying, "Hey, I learned this from you." And it's like, son of a gun, they really did. They did learn that from me, and I need to fix that. But what sort of things are you teaching them that you're intentional about, that you're seeing the impacts already, that somebody else might be able to pick up and run with themselves?
Yeah, I mean, lots of things, but I think one thing that is probably most relevant to our conversation today relates to finances and I think their philosophy around money. My truth was growing up in the Maritimes, there was a lot of poor people and, I wouldn't say that we had scarcity, but there was definitely not enough for the things that we wanted. Right. And I've been really intentional about helping the kids understand that money is not difficult to come by. Okay. The truth is that, once you've figured out a few little hacks, there's an abundance of money for us all to go out there and get. Now, the approach that I'm working at with them is that it really comes down to service. Just help as many people as you can with a problem that they can't get a lot of help with. And there's compensation associated with that. Whatever it is that brings you joy, do something that's meaningful to you, that's meaningful to as many people as you can possibly serve. And eventually, it'll work out, right? Ideally, there's going to be decent margins in that thing, ideally with a broad audience, all those things, of course. But yeah, that's been, I think, foundational in the conversations that we've been having is that, yes, we have money. Yes, we don't have to worry, but it's also because we have a mindset around money. We don't sit around worrying about it. We watch our language. We're generous, we're not, gaudy people that, need to talk about it or show it off, but we also don't want our kids to be scared or worried about it,
Yeah. I love that.
For bad. I mean, we've had kids at times where we were very close to being out of business, and I think, we were age appropriately transparent about those things. We wouldn't want them to worry about homelessness or anything, but we've never held back on what's going on and why things might be different this year than last year, I think those things are important for entrepreneurs because, it's easy for us to get in our own heads, right? It's easy for us to get concerned about these things and, be stuck in the grind and always trying to fix things and nothing's right. And I would want my kids to see that, like the greatest joy in this work that I can see is the fact that, I get to go to work and serve people and make an impact and help others live big lives. And if I'm good enough at that, everything else is going to be fine. And if I'm not doing a very good job at that, there's a really good chance it's because of this guy here, and I ought to be doing some more work on him.
So one thing that you said in there is you watch your language around money. Tell me what that means.
Yeah. Well, I learned at a young age, some fairly negative thoughts around money, we can't afford that. No, you can't have that. There was just a lot of like a lot of that, a lot of kind of fear, if you will. And we really didn't talk about it either, but when we did, it was kind of always in the like negative way. Okay. And, you know, for our kids, it's not been about that. It's been about decisions and choices. And, you know, if we do this thing, there's other things that we can't do. Or is this thing more meaningful or more appropriate than, you know, giving money away than charity? And so I'll give you a great example. I was really proud of the kids. You know, my wife and I are philanthropists. We gave quite a bit of money away over the past couple of years to a local charity. My wife was sexually abused as a kid. And so there's a great local charity that supports kids that have experienced that and helps them in the prosecution of their perpetrator. And so we've given quite a bit of money to them, and the kids know about that because we talk about money and we talk about what we do with it, and you know how much there is and what our daily nut is. They know what I got to make a day to pay the bills, and they also know not to go talking about these things broadly because that's not everybody's culture, but in our house it is. And but yeah, it was cool. The kids had a lemonade stand on the weekend. They made $80, and you know they were talking about how they might run the program, and they're building coupons and all this kind of cute stuff. And we talked a little bit about philanthropy and how much they might like to give away. And they kind of settled on, about half of it. They were going to increase the price from $1 to $3 and give half of it away. So they come ahead 50 cents a piece, right?
Yeah.
But hey, like
that's good math.
Good model.
Good thinking.
Good model, right? And so they liked that idea. They settled out at $80 at the end of the day and decided that they wanted to give 70 away to the charity. And I thought, man, like, that's cool. Like, on the one hand, it's cool that they're being charitable. This was on their own design. It wasn't, my kind of decision or contributions. The flip side of that could also be that, yeah, of course, like they've got enough of an abundant mindset around money that they're not worried, which is true. Like you get to be extra charitable when you have extra money, right?
Yes.
And so they're also aware of their privilege too. But yeah, I think, we're just trying to give them a full scope picture of what it looks like being, in a family like ours, and try to help them be responsible with that information. It's tough with a 6.5 and 8-year-old. You don't quite know what they say at school. So, trying to keep it as appropriate as possible and just, like you say, man, hope for the best. Like we're only my first run, man. I haven't been a parent before this, I got 2 kids close in age and we're figuring it out kind of at the same time. Right.
That's what I tell my kids all the time. I'm like, look, I've never been a parent to an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 7-week-old before. You've never been an 8-year-old before and you're learning how to do that. I'm learning how to be a dad to an 8-year-old. So I don't know. This is my first time doing it. Let's figure it out together, But the way you talked about the language thing, that's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say. And there's a book that I really like, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And it talks about, our mindset on money. You can use it in just about anything, like where we get our thought processes from, where we get our mindset from. And, we tend to get it from where our parents were. And unless we have some sort of a reset somewhere, for me, it was getting married to my wife. She had this magical thing called a savings account that I had never heard of before. And I was like, the heck do you save money for? Like this is silly, and, you still are in the military. You get paid every 2 weeks. What do you need to save money for? Right. It didn't make any sense to me. But that was a good reset for me and a good reframing of my thought process. And that really helped me start to think about the language I use around money. And I still catch myself once in a while going back to that old thought process and the way that I say it to my boys. And it's like, it brings that scarcity mindset around money as opposed to the abundance mindset around money. It's like, no, I don't, it's not that we don't have the money for it. We have the money to buy any toy in the store that you want. Like that's not the point. The point is you have 5 billion toys already and, 4,999,000,000 of them you don't play with. So is the money better spent here, or would you rather we go out for some ice cream and enjoy an experience, maybe do some mini putting and have fun together? Like, where are we actually using this money that makes more sense? I'm hoping that takes, but.
Well, it takes practice. And the thing with children is that it takes so much repetition, right? And we have to be, consistent as parents and, on the same page as our spouse. And, one of the things that I've been, thinking a lot about lately is, the downside to this abundant mindset that they have around money is that, the gratitude, isn't quite as high as I would like, if I'm being frank about it, right? They're not worried, right? And so, we're wondering, like, maybe we've gone a little bit too far with it. And, so yeah, I would say now we're kind of, really doubling down on just the little things, like thanks for breakfast, like I get it. Like I never said thanks for breakfast once in my life, but I also didn't have the privilege that these two kids have either. Yeah. Right. And so, yeah, just really trying hard, around appreciation and just the little lessons, like, plates and dishwashers, go hug your mom, tell her you love her and tell her to have like just these little things. But, all these elements I think make better people. And, the psychology, right? The more grateful that we are, the more opportunity we see, the more we can spread that. And I think you and I can both agree the world needs more of it for sure.
Oh, you're not wrong there. Yeah, for sure. So what kind of conversation did you and your wife had? I don't think I've even hit on this before in any of my conversations, but my wife and I are very much, we're constantly talking about, what the future is going to look like, how we're going to be, what we're doing to raise the kids. Are we doing the right things? Are we doing the wrong things? There's constant conversations. Was it work were you guys both already on the same page with those conversations you wanted to have, or did it take some like family planning for you guys to sit down and kind of go, hey, how do we want to teach the kids about money? How do we want to do these? How do those conversations go?
Yeah. Great question. I would say that we did. I don't want to say that it was maybe as strategic as what you're suggesting, but we're very good at communicating on the fly and addressing things as they need to be. And she's very wise. She came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, but far less than we did. And so like your wife, she's great at saving and far better at budgeting. And, she doesn't have ADHD. So she's not likely to, drive a car at $1 million miles an hour or spend every last dollar she has on something that she really doesn't need. So that's been more in my personality. So no, I would say that, despite those differences, we've managed to find a very clear path just through kind of ongoing conversations, and kind of course corrections on the fly if necessary. But admittedly, there haven't been that many of them because, we work together, right? Yeah. So we deeply understand one another's philosophies. We share an office. I mean, we see each other all the time. So that's maybe not as much a challenge for us as it might be for some other families that don't spend as much time together.
Well, I mean, I think that last part is key anyways. You should be spending a lot of time, as much time as you can with your family to begin with, right? So, sadly we don't see that as often. But, I look forward to my wife retiring to be able to spend a little bit more time and have those conversations a little bit more intentionally. I did verbalize it as it was almost strategic, and my wife and I, it's not as strategic as maybe I made it sound, because sometimes it's just like, hey, the way you said that to the kids, like, can we figure that out? Can we figure out a better way to say that? Or, what were your feelings behind that or your thought processes? And, I think it's very easy to revert back to the negative mindset, very easy to revert back to the feeling of, where you came from as opposed to where you're going. The book, The Gap and the Gain. I don't know if you've read that one, but it's phenomenal, right? So, if I'm constantly living in that gap of where I want to go, then even my language is going to change, and I want to be able to live in that gain. And, how are we improving? How far have we gone and how far have we come? And, teach that to the kids as well. And that goes in the way we talk, the way we react to things, the way we do our finances, everything. I mean, it's all part of the process. So. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the kind of key lessons that we're trying to teach these little people is just to be kind, and just be polite, just be kind, support others. Everything else really becomes easy. I really think it does. And also perspective, we want them to be aware of their privilege. We want them to be aware of the realities of the world that we live in and to see things and to think critically about why things may or may not be the way that they are. And, I think with insights like that, they have a hope of being good citizens and being good business people and humanitarians and philanthropists and happy. Like, I mean, what else do we want besides them to be healthy and happy anyway?
Yeah. Yeah, you're darn right. You know, I tell my kids all the time, you know, now that I'm saying this, it's been a little too long since I've said it, but my goal is to raise my boys to be better men than me. So if they're 1% better than I am, then I've done my job. Like I just need them to be better men than me, and, you know, then raise sons who are better men than them, and daughters, of course. But now I've got to figure out how to say that, you know, to my daughter, because that's a whole new world opening up. Like it's not to raise better men than me, but hopefully to find a better man than your dad. You know, like it's gonna teach you what it is to find a better man than me. So
I'm sure that she'll challenge you in all the best ways.
No, she won't. She's going to be perfect, a perfect little angel that will never challenge me.
That's what I mean, though. You know, there's always going to be the perfect challenge, right? I mean, I don't think there's anything that's imperfect about life. You know, as long as that makes sense.
I as much as a child can drive you bonkers from time to time, it is one of the greatest blessings that's ever happened in my life. So, and I tell people I've had a lot of really cool titles in my day, but dad still brings me to my knees once in a while. It's like, golly, this is just phenomenal. Like this, just looking at my kids, it just lights me up. So, it sounds like the same is true for you. So it's always awesome to chat with dads.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to being able to do more things with them, you know. They're in school, but, you know, who knows? Maybe I get to work with them. Maybe we get to build the business together, you know. Hard to say, right?
I've been recently looking at, speaking of the men in school, doing homeschooling, because I like to travel a lot. I like going places, and school really is not conducive for that. And that's, you know, I tend to do traveling by myself, and I don't like to travel without my family. You know, that goes back to the military side. I try to make it now like the only reason I'll travel is if it's going to do something that's going to improve my life for my kids and my wife, right? So, like abundance trips, like the whole purpose of those types of trips are to improve my life for my family's life, right? So, I'll do those types of trips, but man, I'd love to bring them on every one of them, you know, everywhere I go. Funny,
I thought about that too. I was actually visiting, Adam and Sam, in North Carolina. This is going back 2 years now. And I remember thinking, man, like, this is awesome. Like, so I called my wife and we had a conversation with her about homeschooling. You know, the team business is, you know, getting close to the point where we could do that, you know, half the year, month in, month out kind of thing. And certainly the coaching business, you know, you don't need to be anywhere for that aside from your speaking gigs. And, the response was yes, as long as you do it. Which I'm actually at peace with. The other challenge that we identified though is Mel's mom, who moved here to live in this beautiful place, and she's not so keen on the idea. So we'll have to see how things transpire over the next decade. But I'm with you, man. It's a good idea.
And I mean, I love Sam, and he I think is one of 7 kids, if I recall correctly. I think there's 7 of them, and they were all homeschooled too, right? So, and I mean, he turned out phenomenally. He's a fantastic guy. You know, found an amazing wife. So it's, you know, a good person to kind of just sit down with and make you think about that type of stuff to begin with. So,
story.
All right. Was there any other, you know, kind of final thoughts you'd have, final tips, tricks, anything that you'd want to kind of pass on that maybe we haven't covered?
Dude, I wish I had a whole other list of things, but no, I think I lent back my secret tools. But I'm super grateful that you're doing this, and I'm looking forward to listening to other episodes so that I can pick up some strategies, and in addition to the things that you've shared too, man. So thanks for giving me your story as well. I know that this was a lot about me. You're the host, but there's some good nuggets in there for me as well. So I want to say thanks for that. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to hearing more episodes and seeing your success with this, man.
Absolutely. I you know, like I said, if I'm going to do everything I can to steal all the good ideas that other people are bringing on. And if somebody else gets something out of it when they listen, great. If not, who cares? I learned something. So, you know,
isn't that the idea of every podcast? You know, for me, aren't they?
I mean, hopefully somebody learns something from it. You know, I just, but if not, then I'm just posting things out to the world that I'm learning from. So who cares?
That's right. Yeah. Good deal, man. Well, thanks for having me. This was really good, man.
It was great, Courtney. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being a solid dad, and learning, you know, continuing to teach people along the way and teaching your kids. And I can't tell you how appreciative I am of fathers who are actually involved I actually just had my one of my in-laws family members like asked me yesterday, like, why is it that, you know, all your content is about dad stuff? And I said, well, how many dads are failing to be involved in their kids' life? Way too many, right? We see a lot of single moms, very few single dads, but all those single moms, there's a dad somewhere, probably failing miserably at being a dad. So if I can either just make one dad better, then hopefully I'm doing something to impact that.
Power to you, man. Yeah, it's good work. I appreciate you and it, man. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate you sharing your story. I'm sure it's going to make some big impacts for some folks. But all right, well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. If people want to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you? I almost forget that. I'm still semi new to this podcasting thing. I'm going to forget. But how do people get a hold of you?
Sure, man. Super easy. Go to Linktree/follow Courtney, so you can see my name in the bottom left there, but it's Courtney. So Linktree/follow Courtney, and then all my links are in there.
All right. That's awesome. I have not heard of that before. I'll have to check out Linktree. That's really cool. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll have that in the show notes. Thank you so very much again, Courtney. And we will stay in touch. We're now officially connected, and I look forward to the next time.
Great, man. Thanks for having me, brother. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Biz Dad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.